Amen, amen. Well, thank you, Curtis. Hope everybody really can appreciate all of the abundant field of things you can glean out of that. There was a lot of really good stuff. Appreciate that. Very good job, Curtis. Hey, don't go anywhere. Come back here.
Oh, no, here it comes.
Oh, no. Oh, no, there's more stuff soon. But not yet. All right, so a couple of things real quickly here. I know that we're wrapping this all up, but we're going to take just a couple of questions if we can. It is now almost 4:45, so we'll just have time for a little bit of questions. What I'd like to do, though, is we can break for Oneg and then maybe come back in here for more of a Q&A. Okay, would that be good for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just take a couple of questions that will be straightforward for this teaching, just like we always do after I teach. If you have questions or comments related to this teaching, we could take a few of those, maybe about 10 or 15 minutes at the most, so that we could wrap this up, and then we'll go ahead and eat, and then we'll come back. Okay, so Daweed's got the microphone, so if you raise your hand, Michael, go ahead and get the mic first. And these questions are directed to Mr. Curtis Reid.
Excellent teaching. My question is, all right, let me know here. What do you do when the fruit is not evident, especially when you're going being pruned for the fire?
That's an interesting question. Okay, so what do you do when the fruit's not evident, but you're being... Okay, all right, I get you. That, in fact, actually, from a discipleship perspective, that's when it's most important. Because you need to know that you're in a loving, trusting environment while this is occurring. Because nothing visually, at least that you might be able to understand or discern, is making you feel good. Because of what's happening to you or someone else, it's even more important now. This is where that tending is very, very important. Like I say, once the fruit starts to come, it's kind of easy, right? But the vomit and the tending and the pruning, whoa. And this is why I believe where discipleship thrives. Because you start to develop the relationships that know, you know what, despite brother, sister, despite that emotional outburst, or whatever your doctrinal views, or whatever's going on, despite that, I am learning to love you. And we are learning to walk together. And I'll tell you, love covers one little missing the mark, or does that help? Yeah.
All right, let me add to that just real quickly. So in a group environment, also with leadership, right, those that are anointed, appointed, have some giftings of discernment, there may actually be fruit you can't see, or there's something you haven't been dealing with that you can't see, which is why you don't have the fruit. And that's why in a group environment where you have these accountability people, you have leadership, that stuff can come out. Okay, so there may be fruit that you didn't see, because you said, well, you're doing all this stuff, you're going through this crushing, but you're not seeing any fruit. Well, you're not seeing it. Maybe there is. Or maybe there isn't, and someone else can help you see why you're missing something.
Yep.
And so those two pieces there hopefully will help. Next question.
Absolutely. You need to be in an environment to work, to allow it to be understood even.
So one of the things we want to do is, Curtis and I discovered when we were in New Zealand together, and we did a little bit of a Q&A, that I don't know how useful, but it does end up being entertaining. But no, people really appreciated hearing the fact that we both come from the different sides of the river, and hopefully we're both in the river, but we come from different river banks. And so with that, we get very different perspectives on things, but it makes for, a real good way of kind of dealing with and answering people's questions and stuff. So we had done this together in Otaki in New Zealand, and that's the thing people talk about the most. They really enjoyed the way Curtis and I, we call it the two sticks talking, like, the two sticks of Ezekiel 37. Okay, so before they come together, we actually start talking. So the two sticks are talking, Judah and Ephraim, to some degree. So if you have any questions about anything, more or less, you're welcome to ask. I definitely would like you to, while you have the opportunity, to ask Curtis especially, anything that I've ducked or avoided over the years so that,
Oh, goodness. Well done.
No. No. What I would like you to do, make sure to do, is ask him whatever you'd like to ask him about him or his ministry and everything, because it's not like a normal, guest speaker might come in and do an all-day thing with 2 or 3 sessions or be here for 2 days. He's only here for this short while. Hopefully he'll be coming back soon. Also keep in prayer that they may even be moving at some point, you never know, to North America or somewhere, and it'd be a lot closer, so we may get to see them a little bit more, who knows. But the thing is that he's here now. Okay, so yes, we're both here to answer questions, and you could ask questions about us and our how we work together, about his ministry, whatever you want. But I would like you to certainly take whatever opportunity you want to get anything you need out of him while he's here, because I know he did the teaching and it went a little longer, and that we didn't have as much time for questions afterwards. So please take that opportunity, because we do have an hour or so before we need to start packing things up so we can get the 5 guys, which we know is important. Okay, no, but seriously, you can go ahead and ask anything you want. Just raise your hand. If you're online, you can type it in. Kurt is monitoring the live stream, and so the mic, Dawid's got the mic, and he'll bring it around. All right, Trisha.
Curtis, I really appreciate our conversation during ONAG, and I would like you to go into further discussion about the emotional recession and your vision with leadership and how loving the body can help heal the body, so that as we were discussing, those won't be leaving us any longer, and how, just elaborate more on our discussion, if you would, please.
I see. Share a little bit of it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. In our discussion, the conversation was around EAD, or emotionally arrested development, which I only could briefly touch on there. But one of the things that the Father had shown me in my fires of my life, that emotionally arrested development is a very real thing in all of us to various degrees or another. We have a broken system happening out there. One of the things that he showed me in that is that people aren't received or didn't receive and become stunted emotionally because of the broken system. And one of the things that he was reminding me and showing me of something I'd received, which was a good example to get this, what many hadn't received in certain areas in their own development emotionally. And the physical was pointing to that this was preventing things in the spiritual. It's very real. And one of the things that he brought me to is that when I was disciplined as a child, and I was very good, so it was very little discipline. But when it was required, and I got a spanking, my mother would give me a hug directly following the spanking. Now, what was interesting was during the spanking, I was like typical child, love me, this is unfair, blah, blah, blah. But the hug, following it, where they're going, I still love you. I love you. And she associated love to discipline. Does that make sense? I wasn't left with the battleground of my mind going, I'm right. See, there's no evidence of love here. I'm right. And then if I lose the battleground of my mind, and what the Father was showing me is this is happening all over the place, and then it's occurring it's not allowing people to develop spiritually. So what the Father was trying to say is that you need to know my way. See, my mother was disciplining me, wasn't she? I was getting proof and correction. But you need to see, if you just get one or the other, if you just get the hug when you're behaving badly, or you just get you see what I mean? And what he was saying, it was both. Remember your mom. Remember your mom. And so it was starting to come through, and it was a really interesting thing how the Father used her as an incredible tool for which I had that re-triggered for him to teach me using the physical to get a greater spiritual picture. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I really appreciate your testimony of that, but how, as the body, for those who don't have such a special bond with their parent to go back to in the mind, like for example,
it's not out there without.
Yes, how are we going to help those? Because there are a lot of us that don't have.
So how can leadership fit that role?
Thank you.
Right.
That's exactly
nice. Okay, so
I speak Trisha, so
right. He's an interpreter, right? Yeah. It's tongues, right? No.
No, it's just 4 years of experience.
Okay, so no miracles going on here.
No.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Like the reason for it was that there's an environment that's necessary because not everyone had that anchor point, right? So the idea was with equipping me as a leader to go, look, do it my way, to investigate so I would be finding his way. And so as leadership and having to relearn this, it was literally about becoming equipped to learn what did Yeshua pattern. What did it actually look like? And so this was a whole journey of drilling down. And I discovered that through the parables, the repetition, and the questions, that you were actually seeing a pattern as recorded of this loving, corrective, edifying environment. And it was real. And so leadership has not been equipped to do this, generally speaking, servant leadership. And so one of the things that he said out to, and my questions was, well, Father, that's your problem, not mine, right? And he's going, I'm trying to circumvent this quickly. But basically, you're kind of like, well, it's your issue. And it's like, no. I've asked you to serve. So why aren't you bringing this in as a part of it? And so I started to then learn, well, how do I do this? Well, then do it the way I did it. Well, how did you do it? Well, read your word, you donkey. And so you start going through this journey, and then basically say, I need you to live this. And it was only mid last year that the Father, I really sensed in my spirit, was actually releasing me to go, classroom's over. Start to share this with others. But I'll tell you, that was a 7-year classroom.
Okay, so now let me answer your question. Okay. No, that wasn't great. I'm just teasing him. But I also understand what Trisha's looking for. Okay, so what we have to understand is that everything that we're doing down here, meaning like on planet Earth, like in the flesh, in the human experience, is all relating back to preparing for and practicing for the actual real experience coming. So when we're told that he disciplines like a father a son, and how there's love in that, okay, that every father who loves his son will discipline, etc. And we're trying to understand this connection between discipline and love. If we don't see it here in examples and we don't experience it, then we're not imitating it and we're not going to be prepared for it. And it's hard to understand the concept when we read about it. So leadership's role, to answer your question, is to help reestablish what that looks like. Okay, because a lot of you do not have parents that understood this. A lot of you, your parents were the actual most scary, least effective, and least desirable of beings on the planet. And a lot of you, that was your father, and if it was your father, it's hard for you even to say, oh, Father, I pray to you. And you're like, but that whole concept of father makes no sense to you because you never had one that was that way. And so leadership can start to bring two things. One, an example in themselves in trying to be able to bring structured discipline with love, with encouragement and love. And, where, look what happened with Cain. The very first time you see this happening, I know what you see happening in the garden, but right here you see Cain. He says to Cain, hey, what you did wasn't right. However, if you do it the right way, won't it also be pleasing? Won't you be, patted on the back and said, good boy? And so that's part of our example there. Now, of course, then leadership's other role is to then train through discipleship, like we saw through the process here. Process. That will then raise up men to do these things, okay? And so that then brings us to what you're talking about, okay? So leadership's role is to do and then to teach others to do that which Scripture was expecting that men would be doing and parents would be doing, leadership would be doing all along, in giving the example of what he's doing looks like. Yeah. So you can experience in the physical what he's talking about. Does that answer your question?
And this is where Paul said, imitate, right? Me as I imitate Messiah. And this is what Yeshua is saying, we do. So when we do this, it has to become example first within the house, because his judgment starts within the house, first and foremost. So it's here first. Then it becomes the light, then it becomes the example. But if we are coming from an emotionally broken system, we're packing all this baggage right into it. And so what is the safe environment to work through this where people are allowed to be vulnerable without, being becoming distrustful or being burned and wanted? Because let's be honest, if I was to share some of my testimony, which I won't right now, but as I was saying earlier today, I shouldn't have a faith right now based on the examples I was given. Does that make sense? And so I think there's a lot out there that the Father was trying to say, to do it my way so that we could raise up people once again to be able to serve. But you can't avoid the EAD. You can't avoid the tilling of the ground and the vomit. And if you attempt to, you're going to create a whitewash system in order to try and get an end result. And don't try and go through the, in pregnancy, we want the child, right? And we're happy doing the sex. What we're not happy with is the 9 months of labor and the pregnancy and the vomiting and everything else and the nausea and the Father's showing us with the physical shadow picture the real thing. And what he was showing me was we're essentially trying to manufacture something that's skipping the very process that makes it healthy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And also just so you understand, to kind of put this together here is that arrested development means that the development had only reached a certain point or didn't go where it needed to go. Why? Because of the design of the system is that, and this is where the failure is, the design of the system is that you need to have mentoring and guidance. In other words, discipling of some sort. And the discipling or the mentoring and guidance has either been zero or bad. Okay? Which is why people in general are not excited about structure, leadership, and guidance and mentoring, because most of what they experience has been awful, okay? Or just has not even been there. Yeah. And so leadership's role is to help to try to bring this back in. How do we do that? First, leadership has to get there themselves, and then leadership has to then teach it to others. How many of you in your own lives, and be honest, or in lives you've watched, have ever witnessed anyone on their own manifest any significant growth in their character? I'm not saying overcoming an addiction or a particular bad habit. I'm saying as a person, really change as a person without any outside guidance or mentoring. You don't see it because we can't manufacture that ourselves, and he's not going to do it by fiat because the system he has wants us to work together in a structure of guidance. Okay, otherwise, why would you ever seek his guidance on anything?
That's right.
Okay, so the structure is built that way. So you don't see people manifesting any meaningful growth without any outside help. Okay? That's why we go to counsel, whether it's professional counselors, ministry counselors, whatever. Or we talk to our friends. We're always looking for some sort of outside help because we realize you can't get there by yourself. Right. Problem is, it's usually the blind leading the blind. Okay? We talked about this in the finance class. If you're broke, who do you normally talk to? Your other broke friends about how to not be broke. That doesn't work. Well, if you're an EAD and you have a similar brokenness in your arrested development emotionally, and you talk to another emotional disaster, where are you going to end up with? No help there either.
In that space.
I'm just saying, in that space. So what are you doing? You got a lot of pity party stuff and you're commiserating, and oh boy, you're bonding because you got the same emotional stuff. But that's all it's doing is magnifying the problem for each of you instead of de-escalating it.
You're drowning each other.
Right. Okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead. What was your other question?
Okay. As people are bonding to their leadership, and there is they're starting a trust, but we all know that we're all infallible humans, and leadership.
We're fallible, not infallible. Yes.
Thank you. We're going to make mistakes, and you're going to cross a boundary that is going to hit a core, and if that trust is broken, and that person goes spinning in their emotional, and they can't trust you anymore, they can't cross, what is the leadership's responsibility in helping bring that person back? If they start to pull away from the fellowship, or you notice there was a trust, but now there's a distrust, what is your responsibility to help those to bring them back? Or is there?
All right, well, first of all, you got to understand and we got to realize that the relationship is not what you think it is in your head. In other words, if you think you have a relationship with somebody, it doesn't mean you do. If they think they have a relationship with you, it doesn't mean they do. And it also depends on what that relationship really looks like and what level of relationship there is. If there is a mentoring, discipleship. Now, got to understand, Curtis didn't get a chance to get into this, okay? But discipleship is not student-teacher like we think of like in a classroom. So you guys are not on that level being discipled by me or him or anybody when they're just teaching in front of a mic. Discipleship is a much more deep intimate relationship of trust.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't mean intimate in the wrong, I mean intimate meaning there's a closeness. And that way, when there's a closeness and a trust that's built through a development of that closeness over time and through experience and through all the other things that go on in discipling, guess what? If something starts to go south, which you and I have had, then you can come and go, I don't know if I understood that, or this went wrong, or this went that way. And you came to me, but see, if we weren't close, you might have just run away. Okay, but it's the relationship that creates the next move. See, but the thing is, most people do not ever go into that level of relationship. So you've come to me now, and we've had almost like a father-daughter relationship. And with that relationship, you've had your moments, and we've had moments where you didn't always understand what I was trying to get you to do, or why, or this, and so the fruit wasn't really bearing out, or whatever it was. I'm just giving kind of random examples. But yet, over time, it either bore out or we made adjustments. But because of the relationship, you didn't run from it. You came forward because you knew the most important things. It was safe, and it was where Yahweh put you. It wasn't something that randomly happened to you. It wasn't something that someone sold you on. It was something you vetted, tested, tasted of, chose, knowing full well it would not always be perfect. And therefore, over that experience, the relationship then manifested where if there was a problem, you would have the no fear to go to me. We're just going to use us as an example. Okay, person leader to go to without any fear of saying, this is not working, or whatever it is that you want to say. That's what'll fix the problem. So when someone leaves, they're leaving because the level of relationship was never there. Okay? It was a much more surface relationship. It was not like if you looked at the circles that he put up there with the tree. It was an outer circle, maybe even second circle at the best. It was not in the white circles in the middle. Okay? But if you're in those white circles in the middle where you've developed that level of knowing the person, knowing their heart. So you know how I feel about you. That's different than maybe how other men have felt about you or made you feel, or how they've treated you, parents, leadership, whatever. And so that's what makes the difference. The people who really don't know that are the people that will run away. The people that don't know how to take what I say will run away. Why? Because they don't know me well enough.
I'll also add to that you can also believe you're in that space, and you're not.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the things that often where this can become the real shock is, and this is where the counterfeit often that I would see in Christianity with life groups and home groups, cell groups and all that, is that these people are meeting socially, or they're gathering, or they're doing, and there's an aspect of reality there. But the counterfeit comes in is where they're not actually really allowing the process to go dig. It's become a social thing, or a social media thing or whatnot. And so, hey, we're all touching base here, but you ain't going anywhere. Remember I was saying 1,000 miles wide, inch deep? And so the counterfeits are going to all do that. What we want to get into is something that's really going to challenge this. You don't get away with just a little social media thing or this or whatever else it is, or let's go and do a program being administered from mamaship. Let's actually walk together and watch what the Father will start to do. But what I'm saying, and what I believe Yeshua was doing, was not alone. You will submit into something and be accountable to. And if you serve, you will not do it alone. You will continue to submit into that. And this is a vast difference from 500 spokes coming off a mothership, all doing nothing that's not really digging below or allowing the opportunity to even get in to the intimacy that allows people to go through the real issues. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so this is why the pattern was smaller, but it had the potential to conquer the Roman Empire because you couldn't stop it.
Right. Okay. So let me, and I really appreciate the question because it kind of helps us give examples with this. Okay. Let me take two things. So first, when we're looking at the idea of this relationship. Okay. This is, by the way, why dating is a bad idea. Okay. Because the ultimate relationship is husband and wife. As through the example, the echadness is the example of the oneness coming together. So when you're dating, what happens? Well, you don't like something, you could always get out of the relationship, or there's no need to submit, and you could always make sure if I'm not getting my way, it's the highway. You're practicing all the wrong things, okay? You are. You're practicing and getting real comfortable with a mindset that will destroy the potential for your marriage. Because in a dating relationship, there's no commitment level except a very light one. And so therefore, exiting is easy. Same thing on the outer rings when he was drawing the tree example.
It's easy.
You know, the people who are watching a live stream, they've got the easiest way to leave. I wouldn't even know it. The people that come here locally, it's more together because I know you, you know me, but maybe I don't know you that well. And if you left, you know, I'd notice it to some degree, and you'd whatever. But it's the people that we end up in a relationship with where we actually, and by the way, do you ever get married by accident? No. So what happens to get married? You vet each other, hopefully. You then discuss with each other the nature of the relationship that you're going to get involved in, and then you make an agreement. See? So we have offered in the past, and still offer, an ability as leadership to cover and uncover. Tricia doesn't have someone to cover. And so years ago, we came to an agreement to provide that covering. And so we came to a mutual agreement on what the relationship would look like. Not what it would actually look like once it was experienced, but what we agreed of the terms of the relationship, right? To provide basically what a husband or a father would provide since she didn't have either of those to go to, okay? And so then that required, though, the same thing that would be required of a daughter and a father or a husband and a wife. The ability to come for counsel, but also to submit, not argue, and to take advice and counsel. Which, by the way, if you ask her, she'll tell you, I never told her necessarily what to do. I gave her guidance and guidelines as to how to make the decisions, okay? But that being the case, it's an agreed upon relationship. Look, Abba gives you the choice. I lay before you life and death. What did he tell Moses? Ask them if they are willing to agree. So you have a choice. But if they agree, this is what they're agreeing to obey, submit, and do everything I say, and I agree to take care of every possible thing they ever need. Okay? It's a really good deal. I mean, you know, as deals go, it sounds like probably the best one ever existed. Okay, it's a really good deal. What I'm just saying is that when we look at the surface level that most people have in their relationships with their leadership, in their ministry, whatever, part of it's the ministry pushes everybody away, doesn't want to have any relationship. Some of you may feel that about me because you haven't drilled down hard enough to make the relationship. Because quite frankly, I don't need to waste my time, please don't be offended, with people that just think that it'd be really cool to be friends with the rabbi. Okay? So it's not that I purposely avoid you or anything. It's just by design, not easy to get access to me unless you push at it a little bit. But those who push at it and make the effort, they find they get all the attention. Do you ever have trouble getting my attention? Okay? Neither does anybody else who needs it or tries to get in touch with me have any trouble getting it. I just don't go around offering it and giving it. I don't have the time to just spread it around and throw it everywhere. Okay? There's too many of you and only one of me. But you can choose the level of your relationship. So the people generally who walk out, is it my responsibility to go and chase them down? No.
I enjoy a system or a process now in New Zealand where there can be issues that I used to receive that call at one time. And I would take that call and because it mattered and it was needed and necessary. But that doesn't mean it was ideal that I did. It just meant it was the only option at that point. Once that option started to change, now I very rarely would get that same type of call because that call's made it to somebody else long before it ever got to me. It never needed to get to me, didn't need to be known. But the person who the call was going to, they knew that if this needs to get escalated to me, they get it to me. But most times, they don't need to do that. But if something does make it to me, well then, you work through, and you work through in the most wise and responsible way you can. But quite frankly, as the body matures, the noise reduces. It's actually that it actually occurs because many hands are making light work, right? You know, and you start to actually operate as a body. So now I don't experience the noise that I once did with the fellowship. Yet the fruit that I'm seeing, I didn't actually produce. It was a matter of just move the sprinklers. So Rabbi's moving the sprinklers here, right? And we're talking about, and it's going, and that eventually starts to flow through.
Right.
You know, it does. And so I think what's coming is MTOI as a whole is going to be able to be a bigger and bigger and bigger blessing to the body if it, continues to take discipleship matters seriously, which...
Okay, so let's take this into discipleship. So you saw the model with the different stables, right? And how they were kind of tiering out, okay? When we had it up on the screen. Okay, so you had that model. Think of that the same as Moses with the heads of thousands, then the heads of hundreds. And so Deuteronomy 17 only came into play after everybody else in that chain had already said, I don't have an answer for you. Okay? But it could have and should have been handled at those other levels, and now often does in his case because he has people that have been trained to do these things. We at this point don't have that implemented as much because guess what? He's been doing that for over 7 years or 8 years. We're just now embracing the idea that we need to set up a structure for discipleship. We've talked about it a lot, okay? And that's something that Curtis and I have talked a lot about. That's one of the reasons why I said I want you to come, partially because I really want to talk about how we can integrate what they're doing with what we're doing. The other part of it was so that he could share with you, because he's I would call him the expert on that I've been interacting with about discipleship and how that can look and how it can be set up as a structure. Because in MTOI, like any other group, there's way too much noise. Now, there are going to be people like you that don't really have somebody individually to go to, but you know what he has going on also? He's got ladies now that go to their husbands before they go to him. Because the husbands are now being discipled on how to deal with their role right. And so they'll come to him now and he'll say, no, did you talk to your husband? Okay? There are people now that are getting their roles right, and so that noise is being handled where it would have and should have been handled. Okay? So now not everybody has that though. Like you're single, you're unmarried, you don't have a father, so you wouldn't have that natural place to go. But let's say that there was an elder you could go to and we have people that could do that and then that would not have to come to me directly first. There are things like that can develop, but what does it need? The thing that I was going to bring up before that I didn't get to say because it slipped, but I remembered it when you were talking, which is this. The main point, what do you think the main point is of the discipleship as he's been describing it? Maturity, right? With maturity comes less noise. Do you think that it's possible to keep all the commandments in an immature way? Pretty much. You don't need a lot of maturity to keep Sabbath, eat right, not kill somebody. Well, that might take some maturity. A little self-discipline anyway. Okay? All right, but the point being, I think what he's looking for, and we talk about this a lot, I think Marty may help put a little video together, a little promo video, and part of it was, are we becoming the type of person Yah wants to live with forever? Okay, and a lot of that has to do with being mature. Remember, we talk about those paradigm shifts, and the last one being from child into mature adult. That's why they call them the children of Israel. They never call them the adults of Israel. You ever notice that? Okay, and so that being the case, discipleship primarily is not about getting everybody on the same doctrine or on the same belief about something here or there. It's first and foremost about growing up. Because if you're not mature enough, you're not going to be able to handle someone challenging your doctrinal position anyway. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the reason why we experience the arrested development in our emotional development, et cetera, is because the body is being taught by other people that are emotionally challenged. And so it's just being perpetuated along the way. And so...
We're being trained in it.
We're being trained in it, raised in it.
Yeah.
And that's what you could call generational cursing.
Yeah.
Okay, it just gets passed on along the line. I used to teach this in the martial arts to understand. You cannot get, as long as you're under a teacher, you're never getting further than that teacher. Okay, because you can only learn what I can teach you. Okay, so... if you're learning from an emotionally challenged person, how are you ever going to get beyond that level of emotional maturity? If their level of emotional maturity on a scale of 1 to 100 is a 20, you're not getting further than a 20 out of that person. You're going to need to go find somebody that's above a 20. That's part of your vetting. Just like I tell you out there, you can find some people who can teach you some Torah, but are you learning third grade level and second grade level Torah? Or are you learning a more full level of Torah? But you know what? If you haven't matured up, it probably doesn't matter.
Has anybody heard of safe place and all this stuff going on in society now with the younger, we need our safe zones and this and that. That is a direct result of a spirit of an emotionally damaged, immature society. Do you see? It has to provide this because it's not coped, it's not maturing out of it for exactly the reason Steve said. So as everything breaks down in the family nucleus, you're going to see society we need to be politically correct because we can't offend them. And we got to put them in safety. Do you see what's going to happen? We're eventually going to experience the curse or the judgment of bondage because our society is unable to be free. Do you understand? It's very serious. We will have to be legislated into a place of functionality. And so the very nature of this is putting us in bondage. And actually, Torah is the freedom as we mature. Do you see the irony of this? And how many has anybody ever heard? Oh, so you're going under the law? You ever heard that? And it's craziness. Yeah. They're actually saying, give me all the litigation there is. Give me the hundreds of thousands of laws and look at what freedom looks like. I've just been traveling airports all over North America in the last 5 weeks with Pip, and I'll tell you, this is not what freedom looks like.
Yeah, when you go to airports in other countries, it's not like going through TSA and what you have to go through here, and he's had to do that. But no, listen. The idea of the problem with even like the reaction that he said, in other words, the safe place developments and all these things, is that they're telling you things aren't safe that actually are, but you're just not emotionally able to handle them, which you should.
That's right.
I mean, there are things that aren't safe, but there's things being called bullying now that is like nonsense. Okay? But the children are going into unbelievable meltdowns over things that I'm like, are you kidding me? I would have been loved it if my childhood, that was the worst that ever happened to me. And you're calling this like horrible bullying to start booting kids out of school over some nonsense. Well, he called me a name. A name? How do you think I learned to zing back with all the names I can zing you back with?
How do you think we fellowship at all?
That's why he carries a white flag. So you
got a safe space around here? He called us a fellowship? Why not?
And look, and the Gadol class figured that out at the feast too. During Unleavened Bread, we had a little meeting. One of them hit me with what do they call it, roasting. They tried to roast me. I roasted them right back twice as hard. They were like, whoa. I said, I don't mess around. Listen, I was a teenager too, I tell them. And trust me, where I grew up in New York, if you couldn't zing back as fast as it came in, you had no shot. Okay, you are not going to make it. But now these things are considered unsafe. Well, they're not appropriate. Now, don't get that wrong. But we should be able to develop a maturity and thick enough skin that we can laugh instead of get angry or get depressed or cry and, oh, well, somebody hurt my feelings. Well, no, you somehow let your feelings get hurt. What I do doesn't necessarily hurt your feelings. How you receive it is what hurts your feelings. Okay? I can't control what you do to me. I can control how I respond to it. All right? And I've got people that I have to work with on a regular basis saying, stop letting it get to you. Well, how do you do that? You just stop letting it get to you. And if you guys saw that Bob Newhart thing, stop it. Okay, that's Bob Newhart's counseling. Go look that up on YouTube. Okay? 5-minute counseling. You got a problem, at the end of it, he just yells at you, stop it.
It'll cost you $5.
It'll cost you $5, 5 minutes, that's it. We have to just realize, though, how much power, this is what the immaturity is. In our immature state, we give all this power to everybody. Power to make us happy, power to make us cry, power to make us angry, power to cause us to be depressed. Why do you give everybody all this power? Everything that I just said is a choice. You can choose to be happy, choose to be upset, choose to be depressed. These are all choices. Oh, but you don't understand what he did to me. Who cares? You still have a choice. But. Now you sound like a goat. You're a sheep or a goat. Okay, but. The body has to grow up. I think the discipleship program that Curtis lays out is one of the best designed ways to help that. Because in that place, and I've been to one of his discipleship meetings that they do weekly, all right? And I got to watch some of this in action of the guys there. And of course, now got to understand, I was at one that had already been going for a while, and these guys were already in a pretty good spot, okay? But I got to watch how much they could basically handle all kinds of good stuff going back and forth, and nobody was offended, nobody had a problem. And we dealt with some stuff that still people weren't letting go of, but they were able to deal with it without bowing up and getting all angry, getting upset. Ladies need this too, same thing. Okay, because I'll tell you what, for good or for worse, I like the Marco Polo thing. I know for some people it's very frustrating because there's a lot of nonsense happening on the ladies and the men's Marco Polo from time to time. A lot of people get offended real easy and quit. Doesn't take much. All someone has to say is, you put that in the wrong group, and boom, everybody's running to the hills. What kind of maturity is that? Okay? And we've seen things in the guys, just as it seems ridiculous or light, but to the person, they took it very strong. We are thin-skinned and hard-hearted. We need to be soft-hearted and thick-skinned. We got it backwards. I think the stables helps create an environment where we can develop that. And so we're going to embrace a lot of what he's talking about and try to implement some of that stuff here, okay? Anybody else got a question or comment? Okay, Kurt, go ahead.
I got a lot of them stacking up here online. Questions. How can we recognize that we're actually in the water and not on the banks?
Ooh, that's a good question. If you're too much on one bank or the other, then you're not going to recognize that you're actually on the bank, because the whole idea is deception. So I generally tend to say, well, what you'll generally find on one side of the riverbank is maybe modern Talmudic Judaism, Messianic movements, Hebrew roots, and on this side you're going to find all manner of weirdness in the Christian camps. So just by virtue of that, you've had a journey somewhere to date, you know. And so it's important then to say, okay, well, is all the leaven gone from my house? Is all this, do I have no spiritual adultery? Do you know, every year I make this prayer on the week of unleavened, Father, show me what's still there. And every year my hope is that there's nothing left. And every year he says, oh, have a look at this. You know, one day it might come when I make that prayer and the Father goes, it's gone, son. But it's not yet. I don't know when that comes. It's a lot less, you know, like this year, you know, probably the best one I've ever had regarding that. But, so my encouragement to that person is that start honoring the Father, walking in his ways, make those prayers. The week of unleavened bread is to deal with this stuff and watch what he reveals to you. Let it happen. Don't be so prideful. You know, I'm the Lipizzan stallion or the horse, when actually, we're not in that state yet. Don't allow this to drag it down. One of the most beautiful things about Teshuvah is realizing that the Father is doing a beautiful thing through an imperfect system. Our men's discipleship and women's discipleship in New Zealand is not some perfect little prissy environment. For the average people that have lived nothing but whitewashed tombing, which is most of the religious world on both sides of this river, they would look at it and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. It scares them. I can't live that. How can that be right? Because they're used to faking it until they make it. You've learned, I'm going to be really harsh here. We've learned to be disingenuous. We're actually taught to be. Yeshua hated it. He called it whitewash tombing. It is killing us. And we will not become the light we are to be until we actually start allowing the tilling of the soil. There are some men in this room and women in this room that have started to do that. They're actually here that have come here. And the fruit is unbelievable. Who's doing it? I'm not. They're not. All we're trying to do is walk in the Father's ways. So the responsibility is more on that. So I would say to that person that start doing what the Father asked, start walking, and you'll start to actually see these things exposed, but you're going to have to be honest with it. It took a real sledgehammer in my life to actually admit that I wasn't hearing or seeing what I needed to see, because it's too much pride, too much knowledge or supposed knowledge.
All right.
So I don't know where that person's coming from, what they're asking, their position, but I know one thing. You get on your hands and knees and ask that one. That's a prayer the Father's going to answer.
All right, so now in complete disagreement with everything he just said. No, I'm not. I'm not in complete disagreement. But I want to hit a piece that I think is missing in what you said, which is there's an assumption that the person can actually ask the question like, well, start walking in the ways. Well, see, here's the problem, and I've talked about this the other night. I'm going to start saying it a whole lot more. You, on your own, are not qualified to figure that all out. You're supposed to have help. And so when you want to know what side of the riverbank you're on, you need to find somebody in the river to help you understand. Yeah. Because you will think you're in the river at some point. Now, if you were completely outside the river, you were sitting in a synagogue or you were sitting in a mainstream church, you were sitting somewhere, well, then you know you weren't in the river. But then you'll go up to a point now you think you're in, and you have no idea how much Christianese you still got going on, or Judaism, or whatever ism it is. I mean, I have to tell people on a regular basis, you're still struggling against blah, 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 whatever their background was. And they'll look at me like, no, I'm not. I say, well, you can't see it. Okay? You need someone who you can trust, who you can be accountable with, who can see it. Someone, by the way, you know how you find one of those real fast? Get married. Why you laugh? That is what your spouse will do. They will see all that stuff you don't want anybody to see and wish nobody would bring it up. And they'll bring it up. And not necessarily the way you want them to either, and you end up having a fight. Then you need to call me. What's going on here is that you think you've got it all together at some point, and you've progressed and you've arrived. And so you think you're in the water. And so you can give the prayer that Curtis says, and you should, but realize there's a limiting factor, which is how ready you are to hear directly. And most of us are not. All right? You need.
Don't worry, he'll smash you. You give him permission. You get ready for it, though. You think you're in good spiritual shape?
Well, hold on a second. I'm not disagreeing with him. But most of us are still disingenuous. We're not ready to ask openly and really want what we're asking for.
It's a very good point.
Because we're still disingenuous, which is also a point he made. So I'm just going to help, again, filling in some of, he's coming from his perspective. I'm hoping to fill in some of the leak holes. Because sometimes I'll say something, he'll fill in some of the holes that somebody may kind of slip through.
It's very, very, very real.
The real point to the answer is you need someone to help you to see at some point. It's easy in the beginning. If you're walking around in a charismatic Baptist or some other church, you know you're in a church, you're on a riverbank. All right, no problem. Now you start keeping Sabbath and feasts and you're eating right and you got some of those things worked out, and now you think you're in the river. But you're still doctrinally and positionally all where you came from. So you're a Messacostal or a Messabaptist or some other mess.
Yep.
But you think you're in the river. No, you probably skirted the riverbank and got your toes wet and stuff, and you're starting to head in the right direction of the water. But there's still so much more. And to see those things, listen, most of the times when I'm banging heads with somebody, it's because of the something that they had from that riverside, that the riverbank they were on, that they're not seeing, that they're not letting go. And it's still filtering like glasses everything they're seeing. Yep. And they need to maybe picture somebody like with 50 pairs of glasses on. They pulled 30 or 40 of them off, and they're still got a few more on. They think they got them all off. They don't realize they're still filtering. Okay, so my answer would be look for vet. Okay, that's the big part. You guys, the leadership has this responsibility. You have one simple responsibility. Find those 5 full guys. Vet them out, find them, because you need them, because they're there for the perfecting the saints, and they're there to be in position until, and we have not gotten to the until yet, until we all come to the fullness and measure of Messiah. We're not there yet.
That's right.
Which means you still need them. Your job is to find them. Not for me to tell you I'm one, he's one, whatever. Go find them. Well, if you don't know what to do, pray, ask Father, show me those guys. And then when you find them, let them work with you. Let them help you. Use them as the resource they're supposed to be to help in the perfecting. Perfecting is a very strong term versus just like, getting you on the right path. I can get you on the right path and you can still be a mess. Perfecting means getting every little blemish, every little thing out of there. They're qualified to see the stuff you're not qualified to see, or you're not ready because of the disingenuousness and everything else to truly say, Father, show me, and just receive it. If you say that and really mean it, but see, you'll think you'll mean it. Because I know I have met so many people that they first start meeting, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a Messianic rabbi. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, this church I go to, boy, we just love the truth. And they're telling me about their church. And I said, oh, you love the truth? Oh, yeah, I love the truth. Okay, can you handle the truth? Oh, we handle the truth. We don't, nothing. I said, you sure? Because I'll pop that bubble real quick. But they're convinced. Because they think they've already got it, so they're not afraid to see anything else. If you don't realize that you're still afraid to see more about you, you may be very happy to ask the question thinking there's nothing he's going to show you. You got to really be open to bearing yourself wide open if you want it to come direct. Most of us can't do that.
No.
We're not. Why? Because of the maturity problem. That takes, now you may get to that place, hopefully you'll get to that place, where you're mature enough to say, Abba, show me, and he'll show you. Now, he'll show you even when you're not ready, you'll just not receive it.
And this is a fair point.
Okay.
For me to make that prayer, which I did 10 years ago, that was a journey of, 30 years to that point. Now, it shouldn't be if we're in a healthy system.
Right.
But
we're not.
We're not.
No.
And so this is what happens. But a lot of this stuff, again, I'd encourage you, we'll surely be posting a more expanded version of this teaching. There's so many things we can't get into immediately when you're trying to give a summary or an introduction. But the long and short of it is that if you are walking alone, you are not in the model. And that's why, do you ever see that slogan, never walk alone? What is? Because, so you need to be connected in. You remember what Paul was saying? Don't be, forsaking the kahal, as is becoming the habit of some. See, when you're doing that, you're disconnecting yourself from the process. So now the question then is, okay, I get that bit. So, and the Hasatan knew that would happen. All right, let's give them life groups. Everyone hear of life groups? We give them this, we give them that. And they become counterfeits. The thing that should be actually occurring here is a fivefold should be feeding in to a discipleship environment, not an apostate mother Babylon mothership. Feeding garbage, and there's no accountability, do you see what's going on? So we get a conditioning, a programming versus actual tilling and discipleship.
What was the wording you had put up there? Was it like, you never need to walk? What was the walk alone thing that you would use? What was the phrase you used?
Never walk alone.
Okay. See, when he was saying that in that setup, you don't ever, I don't want to say the word need, or you don't have to ever be alone. You never walk alone. I want to take that in a different direction and say, you can't get where you need to go by yourself. So let me just take that, just that little step further. Not only in that system will you never walk alone, but if you're not in a system like that and you are trying to walk alone, you're never going to get there. You can't get there by yourself. The kingdom's not going to have people living off in the mountains as hermits. Okay? You can't get there by yourself. You need to be a part of we call it the forever kingdom or the forever community. That's what he's building.
When going through the crushing, how do we persevere and not get discouraged, especially if you feel alone as the body? How do we support those going through the crushing?
Okay, well, first of all, I think it's very important that we understand that the crushing is a part of the process. So we don't think of it just as a crushing. Okay, what does it say? Let's just quote scripture. That Yeshua was willing to suffer what he suffered. Why? Because he knew and had an expectation of what was coming. See, if you have an expectation of what the crushing is going to bring, you can get through the crushing. So what do we do to people or for people when they're going through some sort of crushing? Remind them of what comes after the crushing. Okay?
And
to give them something to understand why it's happening and what to look forward to.
In a healthy discipleship environment, the answer is that if we were doing discipleship as a body should, she wouldn't be asking the question. She'd be living the answer. Do you see the point?
Because she'd have a group of people to go through the crushing with, who'd be encouraging her all the way through.
I have some dear brothers in this room that we've walked through some pretty serious stuff together. They wouldn't ask that question because they lived it out, right? My heart goes out to this is showing a deficiency of what, you see, that very question is showing us what we're not. So the question is, are we going to obey the Father and do and grow and be what we're supposed to be? Because right now there's a world that's got alcohol, sex, psychotropic drugs, whatever else it is to dose the reality of what we are not. We are not a light to the world. They're going to counseling of every kind of form. I mean, half the counselors out there, these people are more messed up than the people they're counseling. It's getting ridiculous. But if we were a system, you imagine if we were what we should be. People are looking at the system going, wait a minute, they live in the same world, they're in the world, but they don't seem to be of it. Interesting, what's going on? Well, they too have issues and things are going off. They're not being whitewashed tombs anymore. They're actually letting people know, oh, wait a minute, they don't need the psychotropic drugs. They don't need the alcohol, drowning themselves. They're seeing people love one another. They're not walking alone. They're not paying for secular counseling. Like, well, what's going on? Do you see how it becomes a light? But it's not broken. His way's not broken. We are buying into Rome says, oh, no, just do it like us. Just do it like us. And the Father's going, no, just do it as I told you. And watch what happens as I pattern.
Right.
Good things will come.
All right, so let me use an example. Okay, I want to use an example. So, and I'm not naming any names. This isn't anything that's happening now or necessarily anything like that. I'm just going to use an example that happened in our lives. My wife and I, when we first wanted to have children, we had a miscarriage. But we, at the time, naturally, like anybody would, because most people don't talk about things like miscarriages, just assume that everybody, wants to have a baby, pretty much just goes and has a baby. And, because you always hear about teenagers getting them when they don't want them, so it must be easy enough to have. Well, not when you're in your 30s anyway, but so here we are going through this crushing. And it's, thinking you have a baby, finding out then that you really don't. This is crushing, okay? Now, we then came to find out that this was much more common than we knew. And guess what that did? That helped us with that crushing to realize it was something that people not only had, but they also then they had children after. And that it was not something that was the end of the whole process, and hope came out of that and things like that. So now guess what? If we had a stables where we had people dealing with stuff, that information could be disseminated easily within a group where people say, well, I know people that have gone through that, and give you encouragement. I've had to do that recently with somebody and say, look, they were totally crushed. They just lost a baby. And I was able to say, let me tell you from my own experience that it's actually more common than you would have thought, and that people do have almost always no problem at some point having babies after that, blah, 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 blah. And guess what? They started off in a complete lost, totally beside themselves, distraught place to a just properly sad place for the loss, but not in that distraught place. So the crushing was no longer crushing them. It was just a pain that was going to ease over time. Do you understand what I'm saying? But why was that? Because they were able to. Now, if they had already been in a group of people where, now we're talking about crushings that you go through on a spiritual level, going through this walk that we're going through, guess what? You're being crushed because your mother or somebody in your family said, I'm not talking to you ever again because you're not coming to the kid's graduation. I've had, this happens really, really bad, worse when it's like the mother or actually the grandmother having the daughter tell them you're in trouble if you don't come to your grandson's graduation, your granddaughter's graduation. I've heard that. That's even worse than, somebody from the other side of it. But here it is. You're the oldest one in the mix here, but you have children now who have children, and boy, are you going to be in trouble. You don't go. That's a crushing, but guess what? If you're in a group, you're not the only ones who ever experienced that. And now you can have encouragement from other people who've walked through the similar fire or crushing, who can encourage you in that journey. And also remind you what the fruit is that comes when you can pass through the fire. We also have a teaching called baptism of fire. If you could go through that teaching, you understand the purpose of the fire. And we agree on that. I don't know if you've heard the teaching yet or not, but the way you describe it is very similar to the way I describe it, okay? And so these are the elements that, when he's presenting, is a model that helps facilitate the handling of those things, okay?
Remember the donkey was lifting up? Who knows what travail or tribulation that donkey might have got to learn to be able to help those other donkeys. Remember that? Just to begin, that simple little video clip. What if it was a very traumatic event where that donkey then learned to do that? We don't know what price that animal paid to learn that. Do you see what I mean? All we got was we saw the witness of the others benefiting from something that had gone before them. The issue is for us to overcome. If I go through a fire and I don't allow this process to occur, the Father might have to put me in it again and again and again until I finally will listen, submit, overcome. Do you see what I mean? Going through a fire doesn't guarantee, okay, well, they've been through it before, I'm going to go get counsel from them. No. They've been through it and overcame. Now you're hearing from somebody who can feed into your life in a mature way in that area. And it probably won't be most areas, but I know one thing. As we have grown and developed and what I've seen, there's very few issues where there's not somebody in this group of donkeys that hasn't overcome in an area that somebody might be actually experiencing. Does that make sense? I don't have to have overcome and experienced everything because I'm now walking in an environment where somebody could actually speak into somebody's life with more authority than I could, because they not only lived that, they probably lived it at a higher level and overcame it. Does that make sense? And this gets into deeper parts of teaching in the discipleship.
Right, and also again, keep in mind that remind the person that what your experience may be because somebody else is going to need you to encourage them. Because I was blessed, let's just put it that way, to be able to talk to this one person out of my experience and watch the de-escalation of the emotion, which I never could have done had I not had the same experience and had overcome that experience and gone through that experience to be able to help them through what was absolutely debilitatingly painful for them at that point. But was no longer debilitating, but still painful after I spoke to them. Yeah. Because the blessing of being able to share after successfully overcoming. Now, if I had just wallowed in it and been as depressed as them and never overcome it, I would have only made it worse. Okay? So you want to make sure that if you are looking for counsel and help, make sure it's someone who has successfully navigated through the fire and not just who sat in it and just burned up.
Yeah, we've got enough hypocrisy going on in the body.
Okay? Because all they're going to do is make it worse for you. Oh, yeah, I know. I was depressed for 6 years, lost my job and everything over that. Great. I'm encouraged now. Thanks.
Still didn't learn anything at all along the way as well. It's just become a testimony of what they didn't do.
Right, gave up on kids. Never had any kids after that because I didn't want to go through that again. Okay, you don't want to talk to that person. Okay? Go find someone who's dealt with it and came through it successfully. In other words, emotionally in a good place, stable, and ready to move forward.
Didn't mean it didn't look
issue
ugly.
is.
Just means they got there. And I'll tell you another thing from a leadership perspective, what I've discovered, and this is really interesting. As you walk in discipleship environment, you start to learn where people have overcome. Do you know that there's things in this room right now where people have overcome issues that blow your mind? And I used to think that I had to answer that. I had to be the one because I'm the teacher. And what I started to realize was, wait a minute, when I was getting discipleship, I realized somebody's overcome something I've never even experienced. And if I hadn't been in discipleship, I wouldn't have even known that to that level and them being in a safe environment where I could finally go, okay, well, if there's any weirdness here, I'm still here. But guess what? This person's been where I haven't. And it's not like they're all of a sudden in some uncontrolled environment and everybody's running around doing what they want. But actually, that person may be literally able to speak to them with more authority and in a way that I simply cannot. It doesn't mean I couldn't address it. It may not be as good. Does that make sense? It may not have as much authority. Right. So I want this to be occurring, but how are you going to do it without a safe environment and one that's intimate enough to know that somebody's done it?
Right. All right, now before we go to Brad, I want to emphasize something that he said, okay? Which was really powerful, but he said it quickly, and it wasn't just now, it was earlier, which is the person that you go to, like in this one particular thing, does not mean if they have good, useful information for you there that they have any useful information anywhere else. Don't all of a sudden think they're now your go-to source, okay? That doesn't mean they won't have other useful information. It just doesn't mean that they do. Just because they may be useful to you in that one specific thing, don't assume now I found a new counselor to go to for everything. Because they may not have an experience and a value there that they can give you. So just don't misconnect the dots. Okay? Because he said that, but he said it quickly, and I wanted to make sure to hit that hard. They may just have that one unique thing for you that you need them for. Again, it doesn't mean they might not have more, but don't assume they do.
Doesn't mean they have an answer on the latest conspiracy theory.
Well, I'm just
like that. Yeah.
I'm just saying, that was a good point he made. I just wanted to make sure it was not missed. Okay? Because some of you will go and think, wow, this person knows stuff because they answered that one question and helped you in one area, and that was great. but it may turn into a disaster if you take it further than where the great was.
Yeah.
So
They
just-
might not even be a fivefold situation, and now you're
Careful.
going for fivefold information, and
Right.
they've not been called to that space. But they might have very well been called to share the overcoming and authority
one thing.
of that one thing.
Yeah. Brad?
Hi, I'm in Curtis's stable, so with your permission, I want to kind of do like a behind the scenes, ask him a question about something that took place during the Oneg. You know, I was talking with Rabbi
Okay.
Tom. So
Are you on the,
no.
is he in the Monday? Are you in the Monday stables?
yeah. I'm on the
I'll be
Monday
showing
stable.
up.
Oh,
no.
really? Cool.
Well-
Anyways, so I was sitting with Rabbi Tom, and you can tell me if I describe this properly. Because I said, what could easily happen when you talk to people about discipleship? They're immediately going into what they've always thought, pyramid scheme. It's like you got someone at the top, and it all fans down from there, and everything
Yeah.
goes back or to like a central government that controls everything. Everything goes into the middle. But to me, I said, I see it more like what you'd see in the natural world with cell division, when you got a new life being created. When what happens, it keeps dividing and creates another cell. So it's not that there is the first cell that gives that pattern or the DNA information to the second cell and the third cell and the fourth cell, and they keep doing this, and it grows, but not one cell is greater than the other. And it's like, you know, once I got my stable up and running, then Curtis really hasn't shown up all that much, and he gives me a lot of, you know, levity to do that. And it's like, if I mess up, then I'm still accountable to him because...
But you're in ours.
Right, and so...
See, you're not going anywhere.
So it's like I'm still accountable, but
Right.
it's like, it's almost like this cell division where it just keeps splitting off, and no,
Nice.
his cell is not any better than my cell or than the next cell or than the next cell.
Yeah.
Because every part is important
Right.
in making the whole thing. So it's
Right.
not a pyramid scheme at all. So if we can kind of get that out of our thinking. So is that fair to say that?
Look, it's very fair, and we couldn't get into it today, but I'm telling you, there's another thing. If you start taking eventually technology, if we don't get these principles in place, because remember, when I'm not making some glib statement, 2,000 years ago, it changed the course of human history, what we're talking about. You can't stop it. So you can take out Rabbi, or you can take me out, but you get this going,
Well, take me out to Five Guys.
well, it's five guys. But it's like literally, how do you stomp this out of existence? See, it's the point where we can't kill it out of existence. We're going to join it and then pollute it internally, which is exactly what always happens, right? And this was the advice of Balaam to Balak. How do you want to take down this completely renewed generation that's learned the Father's way? Send in the women and pollute them spiritually. You see, this is the same thing. You get to a stage where we're operating that persecution becomes your ultimate litmus test. You see, if we get persecuted, does it survive that? Can it even thrive in it? It can't, but the fivefold's role is not there to abandon it. It's there to feed it. It's there to give it structure, correction, reproof, and understanding for the purpose of all this. So Brad's not running off now in creating his own little cult or something like that. I mean, a third of our stable's connected into MTOI.
Well, if you do, just make sure you send 10%.
That's right. You send the money in.
Up the chain of the pyramid scheme, yeah.
Oh,
that's
right, flag. But
Oh, now.
yeah, that's right. I got it. Here's the thing. Brad is not running and doing things that he is not seeking advice on or going, hey, I've come across. He's often for me going, hey, I'm dealing with this. What's your thoughts? Did I go with this or that? Do you know what the difference is? I have a relationship with him at such a level that I know I'm getting the true story, the accurate story. And by the way, do I have time to receive phone calls from 12 other guys that are all upset because of something he said? Do you see what I mean? It has to be that it's locked in. And if they try and come around that, it's like, have you spoken to Brad yet? Do you see, if I don't uphold that, what am I doing to Brad in that situation? Even though he's submitting into something I'm a lead donkey of, what have I just done to him? I'm undermining him. I'm usurping him. You see, we can do this. We can usurp too. This isn't just a message for this. Like, we just got to all watch how this works so that we're all pleasing in his eyes. Now, if I found out something that's, I don't know, Brad's, I don't know, setting fireworks off in some guy's house or something, I would be able to go to him and say, Brad, is this true? Do you see what I mean? Like, go to Brad. Not get on social media and start having an argument. All this rubbish. Stop it. We just got to do and act wisely. We need to know how it works. Brad in no way in the world is operating in an unsubmitted fashion. But no way in the world am I trying to control what the Ruach is doing in that environment. And those people in those environments, by the way, a number of them also feed in and respect things that go on in this ministry, and many have been introduced.
All right.
We've had a number of people introduced to MTOI just because of us trying to figure this out, which is really kind of neat.
All right, so just so we're clear, the MTOI coins go out to 5 legs and 6 levels deep. If you're selling them, okay, never mind. Those of you who do multi-level marketing understand that. Okay, look, I really liked your answer, but I don't know that it really addressed the point that Brad was making, which is the pyramid thing. The way I would address the pyramid thing is this, all right? In a pyramid, who benefits? Who benefits?
Person at the top.
Person at the top. In the stables, the way we discipleship process and that, who benefits? Does anybody benefit more than anybody else? You see the difference? That's what I would explain. In other words, there's nothing in it for you leading a stables more than the person in the stables, more than the person whose stable you're in. There's so that's the thing that diminishes the whole pyramid idea. Yeah. In the pyramid, it all benefits the most the person at the top. The higher up you are, the more benefit. Okay? The only benefit the person further in towards the center of that diagram has is less noise. The closer you are to the middle of that cycle, you're getting less noise because the noise is at the outer edges. And that's where it's being dealt with. And the more calm that happens, and the people more on the inside get less noise. So there is a benefit, but that's all it is, less noise. Okay? But there's no benefit to Curtis having you be in a stable that he is the lead donkey. As a matter of fact, you benefit, hopefully, because he's serving you.
Yeah, the benefits for him.
So the benefits go in the other direction, but then he's being benefited by being in, say, my stable. And so everybody's benefiting all the way through the process.
As they're benefiting with you lead serving in there.
Okay, so that's what you would have to explain. As soon as the people say, well, it sounds all like a pyramid thing, say, well, then who's benefiting? See? And especially because pyramids are all designed for financial gain. There's no financial element to this. Yeah. Okay, if you're in a stables, you're not required to do anything monetarily. It doesn't cost anything to join. There isn't anything. There's no money involved. All right? Yep. So, but the best question is to ask, who is benefiting? Quite frankly, I think the people in the stables are benefiting in some ways more than the person leading it. Because they're benefiting by the one they're in. Because that's the way the serving goes.
Just on that, too, because that's a great answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's fantastic. Probably the best answer I've heard you make on... No, I'm just kidding. No,
don't think that white flag's going to work. Hold on. Just wait. You have to know there's a rule with the white flags, and he's aware of it. The rule is that once you draw the flag, if you zing, the flag is neutralized. And he knows that.
That's true.
And I've told you that in the past.
That's a good point. That's illegal use of the flag.
Well, no, it means it's no longer valid. See, so you just brought that flag down. I've warned you about that.
Hey, has there been anybody here, maybe you, Brad, or whatnot, but the people here, have you been, and I'm speaking now to some of the people that were just trying to understand some dynamics of what an international stable looks like where we're not all in the same city or district. Have you been inspired to do a stable because of the benefit he's talking about you did receive? Is that fair? You see, when that happens, you know, I could give this to others. Do you see what I mean? Once you truly have received from Yeshua in someone else, you're like, do you appreciate when Steve's giving you meat to eat, right? You appreciate it, right? So do you have a problem serving others to try and make sure, well, you got to hear what the message. Do you see what I'm getting at? It's the same thing. It will bring you to a place, why should you? And this is what was happening to me. I was getting all the benefits of discipleship. I wasn't giving it to anyone other than in the immediate form. And the Father was going, no, that's it. I didn't do this so you could have a wonderful time in Wellington. Whatever. So this is the point, right? It does. You want to give because you've actually lived the value of receiving.
let me give you an example from our own experience what this also could look like, right? We're relatively new at this together. We know each other for a little bit of time. We're talking a lot about these things. An issue came up. I told him, no, you need to do this. And the flag is, he neutralized it.
My flag's looking pretty pathetic, isn't
But
it?
this isn't a zinger. This is what really happened. Okay? And I said to him, no, you need to do this. And he started laughing a little bit. I said, look, are you teaching a disciple? Are you a disciple teacher here or not? Are you going to practice what you preach or not?
It's true.
I said, so stop arguing with me. And he started laughing even more because he knew he was wrong and he needed to do it. But I'm saying, that only can happen in the environment.
Yeah.
Okay? See, because if you're going to claim to be doing a stables thing, but you're also in his, then you can't be not doing it with him. See, listen, this is something for the men who've been in the men's discipleship program that I had put out there, the 22 classes. One of the things I said to everybody in that class over and over again, you cannot expect others to do what you won't do. You want them to submit,
That's right.
But are you submitting? You want them to hear and listen. Are you doing that? Are you hearing? See, and that's where I was able to call him out on. And he knew it too. He was at his thing, and that's why he was laughing. You know, it was like
That's true.
It's like 3 o'clock in the morning for me. I don't know what time it was you for like dinner time. He's always eating whenever I call him.
But this is why you don't walk alone.
Every time I
right?
call him, Pip's there bringing him food, and I'm like, look at you over there.
You know what? What he mentions is true. Is a very serious thing because no matter where we're at in our journey, you need someone who has the ability to speak into your life. Steve has that place to speak into my life. So when the time comes, I don't.
And it wasn't mean or
that.
anything. It was gentle enough, but it was enough for probably.
Nah, you're a bit of a jerk. No, I'll be honest.
No flag anymore, that's for sure.
And I was so undeserving. Now you're getting a real look at what it looks like. And
Hey, this is Tony Tanakh. What's the matter for you? You picking on the rabbi over here? See, now they're in trouble over here. We got a problem. This is the way you talk, huh? You want to talk like that? We're going to have to step outside. We'll have a talk.
You see, aren't you glad you don't have to see
We got
this
coins
over
at
there?
30 paces.
I say, Father,
They don't call me Dead-Eye Rabbi for nothing.
after I get off the Skype or Zoom or whatever it is with my dear brother here, I go, Father, am I really that bad that I need this in my life?
Worse. Okay, but... No problem, definitely worse. But understand that when he asks the question, a lot of it has to do with, is the person that looks like they're quote unquote leading? Because that's really the illusion to them is that the way the leadership is working, and somehow it's a dictatorial, controlling, or beneficial to the leader type of thing. Because that's what they see in the church model. Okay? And so what you have to do is explain, but you don't understand. I'm also in a stable, and hey, I'm in the same place you are every week. And I have someone who can call me out on stuff and get my attention just like I do it to you. Because look, the model that Yeshua gave, which is Matthew 28, says to go out and disciple, right? What does discipling look like? Well, what did Yeshua do? Yeshua taught them how to be like him. Why did he do that? Because he says, I want you to be like my Father. Because what did he say to everybody about himself? When you see me, you see the Father, because everything I do and everything I say is from him. So you're just looking at me, you might as well be looking at him because he looks the same. We all know what this looks like because we have children that when people see our children go, the apple don't fall far from the tree. And sometimes it's not a compliment. Often, it's not a compliment. Because they see something in that kid and say, I know where you got that from. You're just like your father. You're just like your mother, right? We've all heard this stuff. They've said it of you about your parents. Oh, yeah, you're just like. Yeah. We're supposed to be like. But now the idea is that the discipling process is to help, like Paul said, imitate me in the areas as I imitate Messiah so that you become Messiah-like, not that you become Paul-like. or John or whoever was out there discipling, right? So we're not about making us into those guys, and I'm not wanting you to become me. See, and I said the word guys, I'm thinking Five Guys again. Okay, sorry. Just getting in. Hey, use guys. Okay, never mind. So understand the discipling process is, yes, I want you to imitate me. Not me and my life and my character and all those things necessarily, as I imitate him. Okay? What did Yeshua say even about the leadership? He says, do what they say when they're in Moses' seat. Just don't do what they do because they don't do what they say.
Yep.
Okay? So don't judge me for my imperfections, but trust that the words coming out were what you needed to be listening to, and imitate what you see when you see him through me. But don't expect me to be him. I'm not. Okay?
It's easy to tear other people down.
Yeah.
It really is. If that's the game we're in.
It just takes a zinger.
That just takes a zinger. That's right. But the encouragement is this. Who here, you've got a choice to make with whatever time you've got left.
2 minutes.
Do you wish to be a part of what Yeshua patterned? That's it. It's yes or no. And if it's yes, then do you want to find out truly what that is? And if you think you can do that without living it, because I'll tell you right now, there are people that, I've had people phone me up and they start to live the process and they go, oh, everything's going wrong, this person's screaming and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, first of all, the first thing out of my mouth is, well, welcome to my life. And then the second thing is, oh, it seems like you're getting somewhere. Mm-hmm. They think it's all bad. Oh my goodness, such and such is running. It's like, no. What are you going to do with it? What do you do now with this? Is it going to be all offense? Is it going to be a doctrinal argument? Is it going to be, you see what I mean? It exposes them. It exposes you. The work starts to happen. What we have been taught is bad is actually the opportunity to grow and learn and overcome. Do you see what's happening?
Amen.
So anyway.
All right, well, listen, we gotta wrap this up. I don't know, do you have something quick?
For those that come in and have an evil heart, what are the checks and balances to make sure that they understand?
If they come into the stable?
Yeah, if they come into the stable.
Oh, that stuff
and they
gets
don't have
chewed
a-
out real
and they-
quick.
And they
Don't
don't have
worry
a
about
pure
it.
heart and everything. What are the checks and balances?
Yeah,
to,
We put him in Tony Tanak's stable.
Yeah. We send them to Brad.
No,
I'm just kidding.
No, we put him in Tony's stable and forget about it. Okay. All right, we can't keep going. We got to be done here. All right, so let me just wrap it up with this. First of all, I want us all to appreciate Mr. Curtis Reid for coming down. And the reason I could say coming down is because he came down from BC, not up from New Zealand. Yeah. So, but so how many of you would like to see more of the donkey and the rabbi speaking, the two sticks? All right, because we are hoping to at some point record a bunch of stuff. We were going to have Daniel and Marty and put some stuff together where we can, record some sessions and do some things. Because I think I enjoy the dynamic when the two of us are up together.
It's good fun.
White flag or no white flag,
I need a
it's
white
okay.
flag that can last.
Well, he does have one on his desk when we Skype.
I actually do. I actually have a white
No, he
flag.
does. He waves it. So this is not something we're just making up. He really does use the flag. Just keep that in prayer and keep encouraging us, reminding us that you'd like to see more of that. We'd love to do more of that. We enjoy it immensely. Also pray about, where BPA and Donkey Speaks will fit into in any context with MTOI, as our motto has always been working together to serve the body more effectively. And I know they feel the same way. And we're looking to see how that might, integrate in some form as we do these things, or at least how we can work together even more than we do already, even though we do work quite a bit together already. And so with that, I just want to thank all of you for your time and ask the Father to bless you on your way. But we do need to wrap this up. So with that, for everyone on the live stream, we're going to say, did we already lose that? We're just recording now? Well, for everybody who's watching the recording, shalom, shalom.